I was hoping not to do another message, but here we are, reflections on the election, overtime edition. We've got into overtime, and oh my. I will repeat the words of Orwell. I actually looked it up yesterday and found out it's not necessarily Orwell, maybe anonymous, don't know. But until I know who wrote it, Orwell it will be. In the time of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. And brothers and sisters, whether we chose to or not, we are in a revolution. The revolution has begun, and we can either sit it out or participate in it. Because the world is looking to see whether the United States has become yet another banana republic, or whether it will retain its identity as the beacon of liberty to the free world, the nation to whom all nations look, the defender of freedom, the rescuer of the oppressed. Or have we become like a third world country, determined by middle of the night buckets of ballots and manipulated computer software? Well, we hang in the balance right now. Because as you can see, we, the church, are part of a nation that right now is as divided as it has been since 1860. There was another moment that it was as divided, that was 1776. And whether one wanted to or not, one at that point, 1776, 1775 actually, and 1860, whether you wanted to or not, the church, believers, were forced by circumstance to choose sides. And while it would be lovely to be able to say the church is above petty politics and issues that are about the world, we may not be of the world, but we are squarely in the world. And we are citizens of a fractured and bitterly divided nation. So bitterly, how bitterly divided are you, you may ask? So bitterly divided that couples are divided. This is a great example. But nonetheless, sons and daughters pitted against fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters against brothers and sisters, grandchildren against grandparents, aunts and uncles against nieces and nephews. We are a nation that is not only divided, but we are a nation in crisis. And as citizens of that nation, while we are the church and we must retain perspective, we'll talk about that momentarily, we share in our national crisis. But we must, as usual, turn to the Word of God, which we shall do in a moment. But first, let's reiterate some of what I had written last week before the election, because it's a good reminder that our hope is in the gospel of Messiah. Our hope is not in the world's political parties or ideologies. We do not find our hope in capitalism or in a republic or in democracy or socialism or monarchy or any other form of government, any party or any ideology. Our hope is certainly not in a specific political party, the Republicans or the Democrats, or candidate, President Trump, Vice President Biden. They are not our hope. They are not the source of our hope. If our hope is in either one of those men, we shall be sorely disappointed, and our lives further askew than our nation already is. However, but our God-given responsibility as American citizens is to diligently analyze and identify platforms and positions that best reflect biblical truth. There is no political party platform that completely and utterly reflects biblical truth. They can only best reflect and model biblical truth. And we have voted for those candidates who will best act to preserve the morality of our culture and protect our God-given liberties. Those candidates need not be paragons of biblical virtue, whose lives reflect perfection, in order to successfully act to preserve the morality of our culture and protect our God-given liberties. There is only one perfect man, and he was not on the ballot. Once we have voted, however, as we have we exhausted our God-given responsibility as American believers? Some of us would like to place ourselves above not only party and ideology, but national identification. We are citizens of the kingdom of heaven. This world is not our home, and so we place ourselves above the petty frays and squabbles of national politics. That, my friends, is an untenable position, and one that cannot long endure in a nation such as ours. We are not just believers, citizens of heaven. We are also citizens of our nation. We're not world citizens. We are citizens of America. So we have dual passports. Citizenship in heaven, yes, but citizenship here in America as well. And with our citizenship here, we are believers, but the believers have a adjective modifying it: American believers. So my question, and we'll leave it hanging for a little while, are there additional components to our calling that are specific to our being citizens of our republic? Let's leave that question for the moment and let us consult the wisdom of God's word. As the book of Ecclesiastes so wisely said, Solomon wrote this 3,000 some years ago, a wise man's heart directs him to the right, but the foolish man's heart directs him toward the left. Now, I'm not drawing any specific application. I'm just highlighting the wisdom of the Word of God before we get into our true texts of the day. Just FYI, in case it's been a while since you've been in Ecclesiastes, a little levity helps the medicine go down. The dead vote! Invasion of the Zomb voters coming this November, but a limited release. 6 states only. The dead vote. Do they? Stay tuned. We'll see. We are still in the midst of a swamp. I don't know, and I don't think it really matters on which side you wind up politically, to recognize that our government, our capital, Washington, D.C., the inside the Beltway and thereabout, is a swamp of humongous proportion. And when it comes to draining the swamp, the job is not even half done. It's just begun. Will the swamp become even more swampy? Will it double down on its swampiness? And will the swampiness become a permanent fixture for us to live through until our Messiah comes? Or will begin to get pumped and the swamp drained? Stay tuned. We don't know. Will our news continue to do things like not cover a press conference that our president has called? Will our news media cover that press conference, but only linger on the words of the president for 30 seconds and then cut away and say, more of the same, a turtle on its back, flailing its legs helplessly? We live in an era of fake news, of hidden news, news that is framed from a very specific point of view, if it is covered at all. And most of the nation, while 70 million Americans, half the voting public, feel they are being, right now, as we speak, disenfranchised, stolen from, a swindle of monumental proportions that has untold repercussions. Yet our news media, our social media, it yawns. There is no voter fraud. If you have voter fraud in your tweet, in your Facebook posts, your post will either be blocked, you will be shadow banned, you will be outright banned, or your post will disappear down the memory hole. The world collectively yawns while half a nation is up in arms. And while some of us want to bury our head in the sand and say, it's too much, enough already, let one side win, just so that we can be done with all the tension. It's too much. It's too stressful. If that's the price of giving up our republic, I will pay it. Let's take the socialism and give it a chance. And just as if a tree falls in the forest, does anyone hear it? If an election has been stolen or is in the midst of being stolen, and no media outlets cover the issues and the evidence, was that election really stolen? Or will that disappear as well? We cannot depend, we've talked about this before, we cannot depend on the media to accurately represent the truth, to convey the truth, or, as we've discovered very, very recently to even cover the truth, to even cover those issues that are paramount to our being able as American citizens to be able to make our selections. Are social media just as bad? If there were a way for me not to participate, if there were alternatives to Google and Facebook and YouTube that were truly viable and that could actually result in me communicating to the same audience, I would drop these guys in a heartbeat. I am looking and ever hopeful that these guys their power will be nullified in the future. But that, again, also seems to depend on the outcome of this election, whether we will be ruled by a totalitarian system. Forget socialism. I'm worried about totalitarianism, where your voice is silenced before you even get to utter. What's next? The phone company? Can I have a conversation on the phone? And if I happen to mention voter fraud, will I hear a click? I don't know. Not to be a fearmonger. I have a good imagination. And so do you. Those media outlets, social media outlets that we thought we could rely on, Drudge Report, which to me 20 years ago, when I discovered it, was such a comfort during the Bush-Gore debacle, is now very clearly no longer conveying both sides, let alone a conservative side. Fox News, which again, such a comfort to so many of us looking for a conservative voice or a fair and balanced voice, however you want to express it, it does not seem like it is a home for us as well, with very few exceptions, prime time being the case. But at first, as we look at our scripture, even Satan thought he had won. So we do not know what the future holds. So we must maintain a biblical perspective, because we may not know the what, but we know the whom, right? The whom is not Biden or Trump. The whom is our God, the Holy One of Israel, and our Messiah, his son, Yeshua. So, knowing that and knowing the ultimate end of the story and the protagonists within the story, we must maintain a biblical perspective. Remember what Job said, 12:23. He, God, makes the nations great, then destroys them. He enlarges the nations, then leads them away. God is in control. Nations will rise, nations will fall, but our God remains. Psalm 146, 3-5 teaches us, do not trust in princes or in presidents. Do not trust in mortal man in whom there is no salvation. His spirit departs, he returns to the earth. In that very day, his thoughts perish. Every politician, and even those who are in politics who are not politicians, if they are princes or presidents, they are mortal, and there is no salvation in them. They are limited in their effect. But how blessed is he whose help is the God of Jacob, whose hope is in the Lord his God, not in the Republican Party, not in the Democrat Party, not in capitalism, not in socialism, whose hope is in the Lord, his God. As Luke 8 and repeated in 12 shares with it, this is the words of Jesus, so important that we have two variations of the same thought in Luke 8 and in Luke 12. For nothing is hidden that will not become evident, nor anything secret that will not be known and come to light. Those who perform wicked deeds under cover of night, take heart They may hide their deeds for a time, for a moment, for a season. But eventually, there is nothing secret that will not be known. It will come to light. Nothing hidden that will not become evident. Luke 12, just 4 chapters later. Again, same idea. There is nothing covered up that will not be revealed. Nothing hidden that will not be known. I take comfort in that. May not be known immediately, but will eventually be known. Next point is that injustice does not go unnoticed by God. Injustice does not go unnoticed by God. As Isaiah 5:20 says, woe to those who call good evil and evil good. As Leviticus 19 speaks of honest and dishonest, of theft, graft, and dishonesty. It says you are to have honest balances, honest weights, an honest dry measure, an honest liquid measure, because I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. God requires honest dealings, not dishonest chicanery. Monkey business is not tolerated by the Lord. So important is this concept that we find it not only in Leviticus 19, but in Deuteronomy 25:15. You shall have a full and just weight. You shall have a full and just measure, that your days may be prolonged in the land which your God, the Lord your God, gives you. A false balance, Proverbs 11:1, is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. In other words, God does not condone nor tolerate cheating in any form. That should cause some to tremble. But ignorant men and women remain unmoved. But Romans 1:18 tells us that they should be moved, because the wrath of God, no small thing, as we know, is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. There is no suppression of truth, nothing done in the dark, nothing that is done in secret that will not be brought to light, that will not be made known. And even if we cannot see, our God sees. Famously, mishpat, justice, only justice you shall pursue. Single-mindedly pursue justice, that you may live and possess the land which the Lord your God is giving you. You see, when it comes to justice, when it comes to honesty, when it comes to an avoidance of justice, the answer, the counterpoint to don't do this is that you may live and possess the land which the Lord your God is giving you. Now, that's written to Israel. I would not in any way distort the scripture or presume that we should take this as speaking to America. It's not, it's speaking to Israel. The land that the Lord your God has given you is Israel. But can I not, must I not, draw the application that what may have been true for Israel, the time of Moses, could also be true for us in our land as a biblical principle? Can we not draw the application? I believe we can. As Reverend Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. If there is injustice to be found, we must find it. We must root it out. We must identify it. We must bring that which is hidden to life. If there's no injustice, if there's nothing, no cheating, no fraud, no corruption, then okay. But we already have testimony. We already have evidence that that is not the case. And if we do not root it out now, it will be our inheritance for the rest of our nation's life span. But what about our frustration? What about our fear? What about our anxiety? I'm sure this week we've all felt somewhere, fallen somewhere along that spectrum of frustration, fear, anxiety, or somewhere moving from one to the other and back and forth and arriving back again. What do we do with that? The Word of God provides a solution. 1 Peter 5 says, therefore humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God. This is an issue that is far too big for any of us. We can't possibly have a large enough rally. We can't possibly donate enough money to a legal defense fund. We can't shout our voices in protest loud enough to make a difference. The solution is to humble ourselves, understand that it's not ultimately going to be up to us and our actions. It's ultimately going to be up to God and His will. So we must humble ourselves. We must identify any corruption, any sin in our lives, in not only our individual lives, but as a church, as a local church, as a corporate entity in America. We must humble ourselves under, not apart from, but under the mighty hand of God, that He may exalt you at the proper time. Maybe the proper time is December 12th. Maybe the proper time is 20 years from now. Maybe the proper time, we don't know. But He will exalt you at the proper time. So therefore we cast all, not some, not most, not a portion of, but all of our anxiety on Him. Because has God forgotten to be gracious? Of course not. He cares for you. He cares for us. He cares for His church. He cares for His people living in the midst of a degraded and darkened culture. He cares for our children and our grandchildren. And He is a God of justice and a God of mercy. So for right now, we cast all our anxiety on Him, not looking for Tucker Carlson to salve us, or some news site, or some social media post, or our favorite YouTuber. No, we trust in our God. As Yeshua Himself said, so do not worry about tomorrow, or this year, or next year, or the next 4 years by way of application. Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will take care of itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Or as the King James says so delightfully, and I love the way that the King James expressed, sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. To which I say amen. One of the great verses I memorized as a child, as a teenager, I thought, well, that really puts the finger right on it. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. Do not worry about tomorrow. And as Paul writes in Philippians 4, 6 through 8, be anxious for nothing. Not be anxious for nothing but elections. Not be anxious for nothing but what's going to happen to our government. Not be anxious for nothing but what's going to happen to our freedoms and our liberties. Be anxious for no thing. But in everything, which, by the way, is the opposite of no thing. No thing in every, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known to God. Not be thankful for everything. It's not what it says. These little tiny particles make important differences in what the verse says. Not for everything, with thanksgiving let your request, but in everything. In other words, whatever circumstance we find ourselves in, the good, the bad, the ugly, in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, not again for the circumstances, but thanksgiving to him, to God, let your requests be made known to God. And what will happen? The peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, not some comprehension, not most comprehension, but all comprehension, will guard your hearts and minds in our Messiah, in Christ Jesus. So we must not only be anxious for nothing, but in everything, prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let our requests be made known to God. And that will cause the peace of God that surpasses everything to guard our hearts and our minds. But the corollary, the next part, is important too. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, not false, whatever is honorable, not dishonorable, whatever is right, not wrong, whatever is pure, not defiled, whatever is lovely, not hideous, whatever is good repute, not poor reputation. If there is any excellence, and if anything worthy of praise, not condemnation, but praise, dwell on these things. That doesn't mean that we ignore the crisis that our nation is in right now, but we must keep our spiritual balance, right? Because worrying about this political crisis in our cult, it's more a cultural crisis than a political crisis, to be honest. We all know this. Is like standing on one foot. How long can I keep this up? I'm going to lose my balance, or I'm going to cramp up, or I'm going to fall right on my tuchus. But I must keep my balance. And that's where focusing on that which is pure and that which is excellent and of good repute and lovely, worthy of praise, dwell on these things. So, read the Word of God. Listen to an extraordinary symphony. Watch your favorite uplifting movie. I mean, not Schindler's List, you know, watch a great film, a piece of art, read a great book in addition to the good book. Go through your photo albums. For those of you who remember what a photo album is. Look on that which is excellent and praiseworthy. Focus on that. I recently treated myself to a limited edition. So it was very expensive. Don't ask how much, because I'm not telling my wife. But it was a limited edition soundtrack, 60th anniversary soundtrack of the 10 Commandments, including every music cue throughout the film. It's my favorite soundtrack of any movie ever. Every music cue, it gives you all the rejected cues, the original piano stuff that Elmer Bernstein was writing. It's 6 CDs of incredible limited edition, collector's item, amazement, all remastered, all acoustically amazing. I immersed myself in that the other day and was much the better for it. Whatever is excellent, dwell on these things. But are we powerless? What actions can we take along with casting our anxieties and focusing on that which is good? First action that we can take, of course, is prayer. which we've already done today, but we've not exhausted prayer by the prayer that I prayed earlier in the service. Prayer. We must become people of prayer. If we are not already exemplifying prayer in our lives, in the warp and the woof of our lives, this is the time. What are you waiting for? What greater crisis, aside from external warfare, could our nation be engaged in, other than right now being rent apart? Families dividing. You can see we're in need of prayer. And if the church is not going to pray, who is? And if our church is not going to pray, then who is? And if our individual families and members and attendees and those who are viewing at home, if we are not praying, then who is? It is time for us to double down on our prayer time. And that may be including fasting for some of us. That may be including purposeful, scheduled prayer times. If you have a hard time praying by yourself, find yourself a prayer partner to keep it focused. And quantity is not always best. Prayers are not better for being long, nor are prayers more easily heard by God by an increase in our volume, as if God is hard of hearing. Prayers can be quiet. Prayers can be silent. Prayers can be whatever. We need to pray. Before we go searching for a solution, before we go gossiping about the latest piece of evidence that we've heard about and the latest injustice that has been reported, let us first proceed our conversation with prayer. Say, that sounds horrible, Lord. And if it's true, Lord, will not the judge of all the earth do right? Lord, save our nation. Lord, save our republic. That's a simple prayer, right? My favorite prayer in the Bible, I've said this before, my absolute favorite prayer in the Bible, Peter, Lord, save me, right? He walked on water for a second, sunk. Lord, save me. Short, sweet, to the point, and it got the job done, right? That's my personal preference. Some of you have longer preferences. But short or long, loud or silent, prayer. 1 Timothy 2, 1 and 2. I urge that entreaties and prayers, petitions and thanksgivings be made on behalf of all men, for kings and all who are in authority, specifically praying for our leadership, for our government, so that we may lead a tranquil and quiet life in all godliness and dignity. So we must, when we face the crisis that we're in, the vision that we're in right now, there is no more important issue that we can be praying for than the kings and all who are in authority. In America, we the people, of the people, by the people, for the people, our government, we are the ones who are to be prayed for, and we are the prayers and the prayees, right? Because we have a representative government. And so whether those in Congress, those in the state level of government, those in the national level of government, the Senate, or the president himself and his cabinet, and all of those in authority, we must pray. Paul urges, it doesn't just say, by the way, be nice. He says, I urge that entreaties and prayers, petitions and thanksgiving be made for our government, our leadership. So aside from prayer, what actions can we do? We can fulfill our calling by getting involved. Fulfill our calling by getting involved. Involved in what? As Edmund Burke said, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. an oft-quoted statement. It's not biblical, but it's true. It's one of those good and noble things that I think of, and it's very true as a maxim. The triumph of evil is a slam dunk when good men do not stop it. So the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. I'll give you a great example that occurred 60 years ago. President Kennedy and President Nixon. It is indisputable, and it was indisputable in 1960. In November of 1960, Richard Nixon, the entire apparatus of the leadership, they knew that John Kennedy and the Democrats had cheated in Chicago and in West Virginia. Talk about zombie voters. The dead did indeed vote in Cook County. Mayor Daley, the whole machine. Richard Nixon made the decision in 1960, even though he knew that the Democrats had cheated and that John Kennedy had not won fair and square, duly elected. Richard, and this is a matter of history, this is not my opinion, this is historical fact. Richard Nixon made the decision for the good of the nation not to fight and take John Kennedy to court. On that decision, that simple decision to be above it all, to be a gentleman, to roll over, not to fight, and to lose with dignity, even though there was chicanery, all that followed came. A decade of turmoil for the sake of division of the country. Nixon said, I won't fight. But yet there was division anyway. And who's to say that because of that one decision that Richard Nixon and the Republican Party made in the November of 1960, who's to say that because of that one decision, the 60s might not have been different? But because of that decision, not maybe all because, but contributing to, we had a decade of awful division and war and death and revolution in our streets. The 70s followed. It was a disaster, and we're still recovering from, like, the butterfly effect. You know, butterfly flaps his wings here and across the world. There's a typhoon. I think from that one decision. So I'm all in favor of doing what Richard Nixon did not do 60 years ago. If there is known corruption, now is the time to get it out, because we still are living with it 60 years later. Same tricks, the same thing, because they got away with it. So if there's anything that they're getting away, maybe there's nothing. But if there is, now is the time. This is the moment to stand and to fight. Defend our republic. Defend our future. Let's once again recall the role of government. And again, when we speak of the government, we speak in America of ourselves. For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. I do not have confidence that if one party gets in, that which has gone unpunished thus far, the riots in the streets, the death, the destruction, the theft, the wickedness, the chaos, the anarchy, that will continue, that will remain unpunished. I have no confidence. It is a minister of God to you for good, and if you do what is evil, be afraid. Those who are doing evil, they must be afraid. If they're not afraid, there's something wrong with the government. For it does not bear the sword for nothing. It is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. And because we are the government, and the people that we have and are above us represent us, it is up to us to ensure that the people in charge are punishing evil and rewarding that which is good. Woe to those who do not identify that which is evil and call it good. Therefore, it's necessary to be in subjection, not only because of wrath, but for conscience sake. Because of this, you also pay taxes. For rulers are servants of God, devoting themselves to this very thing. Devoting themselves to what? To carrying out the responsibilities. When is the last time that you felt that you were devoting yourself to the government of the United States? That's for the professionals. That's why you vote once every 2 years, right? You've done your job, let them do theirs. No. We are the government. We must devote ourselves to this very thing. We must render to all what is due, tax to whom tax is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. As Jesus said, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's and to God the things that are God's. That is easy to apply in a monarchy, in an empire like Rome, where the citizenry had nothing to do with the leadership of the country. We have a completely different form of government. We are a constitutional republic. We are the government. Submit yourselves to the Lord's sake, for the Lord's sake, to every human institution. That is government. So I urge you, the words of the scripture, to submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether to a king is the one in authority. In other words, to submit yourself to government and to your responsibility for the Lord's sake. Do it because you have a calling. Do it because it is your responsibility. If you do not want the responsibility of being a citizen in the republic, I suggest that you rescind your citizenship and move elsewhere. But as long as you're a citizen in America, as a believer, this is our calling. And whatever we do, and that includes submitting ourselves to government, do your work heartily. Don't hold your nose and say, I guess I have to protest. I guess I have to vote. I guess I have to be involved. I guess I better read down ballot and see who's running. Whatever you do, do your work heartily as to the Lord, for the Lord, rather than for man, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of your inheritance. It is the Lord Christ, our Mashiach, whom you serve. That means be a citizen in the United States as if you are serving God himself. You're not serving Trump. You're not serving Biden. You're not serving the Democrats. You're not serving the Republicans or the independents. You're serving the Lord himself when you involve yourself in your calling. Politics, what does it mean? We want to say politics has nothing to do with the church. The church is above politics. It's wrong for the minister. It's wrong for the church to speak out on politics. What does politics mean? It comes from the Greek politikos. It means of citizens. That's me, that's you. Pertaining to the state, it's where I live, and its administration. I vote for these guys. And sometimes maybe I'm running for one of these offices, or I'm supporting an office, right? Pertaining to public life. If you do not want your faith to wind up in a ghetto where it has nothing to say to our culture or our world, then keep your mouth shut about politics and keep your involvement to simply flipping the channels or reading the headlines and being that misinformed about what's going on. You are the government. We are the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And these people are believers who have a special calling to do unto the Lord what he calls us to do, and that's be involved. We talk at the water cooler. Can we talk politics? When we talk at the water cooler, or, well, we don't have a water cooler anymore during a pandemic, most of us, right? The virtual water cooler. Oh, how about that weather? Sure is hot. Wow, that's a very meaningful conversation to have for a believer. Oh my, how about those cowboys? Or how about, those cowboys? How about the NBA? How about we talk nonsense. We talk inanities. Let us talk that which actually pertains to our public life, because that which pertains to our public life directly impacts our private life. Shall the church allow politics to be compartmentalized into a biannual ghetto? See, you know what? Christmas, comes once a year, and we take out our ornaments, and we take out our decorations, and it's Christmas time, and we put our albums on, our CDs or our whatever, MP3s, and we listen to our Christmas music, and we turn on radio, and it's all Christmas music. And when it's over, we pack up our ornaments, and we pack up our decorations, and we put it away for another year, and we don't think about it again until Walmart starts decorating, right, somewhere the day after Thanksgiving. Halloween, right? The fall, Thanksgiving. We don't think about this until we realize that, oh, it's time for trick-or-treat, or the kids are going to come in or come around, or we're going to have trunk-or-treat, or we're going to have kids coming around our neighborhood, or we're going to do a fall harvest festival at a church or whatever. And then we buy our candy, and then the next day we buy all the candy that's on sale at Walmart, so we have a little stash for a little while. And then we put it all away, and all the pumpkins go away, and all the candy corn go away that's not stuck in the back of our teeth. We put our wreaths away, and we take out Christmas, and we forget about the fall until next year. And voting, oh, it's that time of year again. Actually, not every year. It only comes around twice or every 2 years. So we get all revved up for a little while. It's election season, and let's get excited about it. And then as soon as election day is over, we forget all about it until 2 years from now. We ghettoize our responsibility as Americans, and we limit it to voting as if we've discharged our responsibility every 2 years. I ask you this. Israel had an inheritance that they, through prayer, petition, through obedience to God, they were charged to defend. We're not Israel. America's not Israel. But nonetheless, the principle can be applied. We have been given a tremendous inheritance. And that inheritance is not just for us. It is for our posterity. Shall we defend our inheritance on our behalf, on behalf of our posterity? We have a constitution. It is, aside from anything found in Scripture, it is the greatest political document that has ever been drafted by mankind. It is not unimportant to familiarize ourselves with the Constitution. It is our inheritance, and it codifies those rights that were given to us by God and what the state cannot take away. And just as the bank teller who studies the real currency can identify a counterfeit, if we do not study the document that governs our nation, we will easily be deceived into accepting a counterfeit. So once again, I will be reading the preamble of the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, even at the beginning, it wasn't perfect, but the Constitution was designed to provide a more perfect, an improving, an ever-improving union. The Constitution hasn't failed. If our union is more defined by disunity, it's not because of the Constitution. It's because of ignorance of the Constitution. It's because of disobedience to our founding document. In order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, our children, our grandchildren, our great children, generations yet unborn. to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And the Constitution provides for how elections are to run. Every state that has a problem right now is guilty of avoiding and disobeying Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution. The times, the places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, not by judges who change the point of the law to fit their circumstance. If we're ever going to get out of this mess, we're going to have to return to the Constitution. It's not unlike the Bible. Not that the Constitution is the Bible, but just as we have a plumb line as believers, and the further away we get from the plumb line, the more askew our lives become because we move away from the Word of God. So too our nation and our culture must adhere to the Constitution. And the further we get away from the Constitution, the more disunited, the more askew our culture becomes. We must solve this now, or it will never be solved. Little by little, the frog is in the kettle and has been boiled, and we did not even know that we were dying and that our nation was in death throes. We must save the patient, but we can't do it. Only He can. The Bill of Rights, we have 10 in the Bill of Rights, guaranteeing freedom of religion, speech, the press, peaceful assembly and petition, with the right to keep and bear arms, maintain a well-regulated militia, no quartering of soldiers, no diming them either, freedom from unreasonable searches and seizures, the right to due process, freedom from self-incrimination, freedom from double jeopardy. The rights of the accused persons include the right to a speedy and public trial. There is a right to trial by jury in civil cases, freedom from excessive bail, cruel and unusual punishments. We have other rights that are guaranteed, plus all rights not enumerated in the Constitution for the federal government have been reserved for the states. The sooner we get back to the Constitution, the better off our nation will be. In the same way, the sooner the church and our culture come back to the Word of God, the better off we all will be. Because remember what John Adams says, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. So how is it that we're going to apply a document that is made for a moral and religious people to a culture that is clearly struggling morally and religiously? We must change the culture. That means getting involved in our culture and making a difference. But I am making a difference. Double down. It's time for us to get very serious. Because the torch of liberty still burns. But will that torch of liberty, will that flame of liberty that the world looks to, will it soon expire? Or will it burn for our posterity? Are we in the maybe the Lord is coming back in our generation. Maybe the Lord is coming back a whole lot soon. We expect the Lord at any time. We can hear the shofar blow at any time, and the Lord will take us. And maybe that's what's happening here. But just in case the Lord tarries, I would like to be able to say I did my part as an American believer to keep and stoke the flame of liberty burning. What is the Lord revealing to His church at this time? The world stopped for a pandemic. The church took note, and really, I think maybe if anybody was watching who is a disinterested party would say, oh, it seems that the biggest impact the pandemic has made on the church is that they're peeved because they have to wear masks, or they can't sing in worship, or their freedoms are infringed because they can't assemble. All real issues dealing with constitutional issues. Again, Constitution versus the government, the governor, the executive, or the judicial infringing on what the legislature has designed. But perhaps the Lord wanted us to learn something, to take note of something in the pandemic. The world stopped, including we stopped. And yet now it's as if we're learning to cope with the pandemic. We're learning to live and say, oh, it's not as bad as they're saying it was. And we have all different kinds of, philosophies and reactions to the pandemic. But humans are amazingly adaptive, right? And we were adapting to the circumstances of the pandemic. Maybe God wanted us to stop in order for us to catch a lesson, to learn a lesson, in order for us to change, in order for us never to be the same again, to take stock and say, that was then, but from this point on, we will live different lives because of a worldwide plague, a pandemic. But yet life goes on. And our cities this summer burned. Our nation driven to destruction. Nation pitted against nation from within. Cities, churches, places of worship on fire. Policemen in riots, dealing with riots. Perhaps that was meant to get our attention as a church. Maybe it wasn't meant to get us all riled up and say, I can't believe that these people who are rioting and tearing our streets apart, that they're not being punished. I'm so indignant. Something must be done, law and order, or Black Lives Matter, or who knows. Maybe our cities have burned in order to get the church's attention. The pandemic didn't do the job. Perhaps burning the streets of our cities will do the job. Perhaps extending into suburbia, that will do the job. Seems no. What about an election that is so divisive? We find ourselves at a national crossroad right now. Which direction to turn? Which direction shall the church move? In lockstep with culture or in lockstep with God? As for me and my house, we must follow the Lord. That doesn't mean ignoring culture. It means immersing in culture with a protective suit of the Word of God. Put on that armor. Whether you wear a mask or not, put on the faceplate of deliverance and the breastplate of righteousness and the helmet of faith, etc., etc. We're at a crossroads. Which direction will our nation go? The world is watching, and so is our God. Be of sober spirit, be on the alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. But resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same experiences of suffering are being accomplished by your brethren who are in the world. Believers around the world are watching right now. Maybe we're going to wind up like them, under persecution. Maybe we will. Maybe we'll have a wholesale loss of our rights, and the American experiment will end in our lifetime right now, in the immediate future. Or maybe they're watching to see, how will we react? Will we ignore the fact that we're the church and we will just go whole hogs in for politics? Or will we as a church be involved in the political realm for righteousness, not for party, not for ideology, but for righteousness? sake. After you have suffered for a little while, the God of all grace, who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself perfect, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. Which is not a word in season for America, but is a beautiful word in season for each one of us, no matter what we experience in the future, near or far. So, got 6 things we can do, and we'll wrap it up here. I say they're all E, right? DTS. Exceptionalism. That doesn't mean that, hey, look how awesome we are. It means that from now on, we cannot go back to the status quo. If the pandemic did not get our attention, if our cities on fire did not get our attention, let this election get our attention. We cannot do church or Christianity or Messianism as usual. It is time to step up and bow down before our living God. Exceptionalism. Let this moment stand as a mountaintop experience, the moment that nothing is the same in our lives again. That the church really is the church. That we really do believe in prayer, not just lip service, but lip worship. Expectation. We must expect that God is going to act. We must expect that God is going to answer our prayers. Ultimately, we know that it will be his will that will be done. But Abraham has shown us the way. Sometimes Abram's will was congruent. Sometimes our will is congruent with God's will. May his will be our will. We must expect that God will answer us. Education. If we do not want our next generation, let's say we're very successful and we're able to save our nation. If we do not want our next generation to squander every gain that we've met by continuing and learning how to be a good Marxist and fall in line and critical race theory and all the nonsense that they're being taught, even believers, we must double down on the education of our children. Parents, grandparents, know what your children are being taught in their schools, in public school, in private school. Ask the question. Do not accept for one moment the great answer that every child gives you, including myself, from time immemorial. What'd you learn today? I don't know. No. That is not the answer to the question. What did you learn today? You must receive an answer because you must answer for their education. And that goes for church as well. That goes for us as well. Why are we up here every week asking, please, look at our children. They need education. The investment that we make in our children today will pay off for their children if we do not train them up now in the way that they must go. They will quickly depart. If you think that 45 minutes an hour every week is going to be the spiritual education that's going to be able to counter what our culture is feeding them in the world of entertainment, in the world of music, in film, in TV, in school, the critical race theory, the white fragility, all the other nonsense monkey business, the Marxism, the socialism. So we better make that hour that we have every week count. So I want you to think about that, and I want you to pray about that. What can you do to help support the education of our children? Evangelism? We give a lot of lip service to evangelism. We believe in evangelism idealistically and theoretically and abstractly, you bet. But as far as actually going out and actually making that water cooler conversation about the Lord or about the things of the Lord, well, that's really kind of closed-minded and that's really narrow and it really wouldn't be accepted. Wouldn't go down so well. No. Who are you worried about disenfranchising you? We're about to be as disenfranchised. We're about to be as canceled as culture can get. It's time to speak up for the Lord, because we're never going to win this on intellectual argument. We have to change hearts and minds. And hearts and minds are changed only by the Spirit of God. We cannot change people from the outside in, only from the inside out, and that's not our job, it's the Lord's job. But how will we have revival? How will we have faith in our culture if we do not share our faith? Engagement. And by engagement, I'm not talking about evangelism. I've already said evangelism. I'm talking about political engagement. I'm afraid to share, the whole poll thing this year, whatever, the polls were so wrong for whatever reason. But part of it, the shy Trump voter, the voter who was afraid to say that they had a political ideology and they were going to vote their ideology. Now is the time to lose the shyness and gain some boldness and some tenacity. That tenacity of Elijah that I pray our children receive every week, I pray it over you now, and I pray it over our church, that we will tenaciously engage the culture, not just to share our faith, but to share our ideology as well, to share the Constitution's principles. And extraction means to remove yourself from whatever is impure. If you're wasting your time watching sport, look, it's easy for me to say because I'm not a big sports guy. But if you're a big sports person, that's a lot of hours in the course of a week, okay? I challenge you, walk away from those distractions. Walk away from wasting time with that which makes no difference to eternity or to the strength of our culture or our nation. Do not take, but give. And that means extracting yourself from that which is impure. And maybe it also means extracting yourself from fruitless arguments as well. There are people that we love, people in our family, but we know that no matter how we engage them, it's not so okay. There's a certain point where Jesus says, do not cast your pearl before pigs. And so I say, extract yourself from fruitless pursuits. Do not ever get engaged in one of these comments sections. Have you ever tried doing that? It's cruel, it's hateful, it's wicked, and it's ignorant. Don't waste your time with that. Exceptionalism, expectation, education, evangelism, engagement, and extraction. That is the way forward, my friends. Let's pray. Father, our God, simple prayer, just like Peter's. Save our nation, Lord. Save our nation for us, for our posterity, for our children and for their children. Do not let our inheritance be squandered by wickedness and by theft, corruption, and fraud. Oh, Lord God, we pray that all that is done under cover of darkness will be brought to light. Let us see it and know that it is you who have acted. Oh, Lord, for the sake of the remnant that is the citizenry of America, the faithful, Lord, those of us who have prayed, those of us who have fasted, oh Lord, for the sake of those who have sought your face with prayer, with supplication, with tears, we pray, Lord, save our nation. Show us the way forward. Show us your power. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, we pray. Amen.